In a distant corner of the Milky Way, there existed a grand assembly known as the Galactic Council. It was a federation of the most advanced and powerful alien races in the known universe. They came together to maintain peace, foster cooperation, and address the challenges that faced their collective civilizations. The council convened in a magnificent hall, a marvel of architectural genius that blended the styles of 100 different worlds. Representatives from each member race took their seats, their unique features and colorful attire creating a mesmerizing tapestry of diversity. Among them sat the newest members of this esteemed gathering, the humans. They had only recently ventured into the stars and made contact with the galactic community. Many of the older races viewed them as primitive and backward, barely worthy of a seat at the table. The human representative, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Admiral Graves, knew that he had much to prove. As the meeting commenced, the council focused its attention on the most pressing matter at hand, the Korgeth. This warlike race had been expanding its territory at an alarming rate, conquering and subjugating world after world. The council had thus far been unable to halt their advance, and many feared that it was only a matter of time before the Korgeth turned their sights on the council worlds themselves. The Korgeth are a menace, declared the Valkorian representative, her crystalline eyes flashing with anger. They have already taken 3 of our outlying colonies. We must act now before they grow even stronger. Agreed, said the Zephyrian delegate, his feathered crest ruffling in agitation. But what can we do? Our combined fleets have been unable to match their firepower. Murmurs of concern and frustration rippled through the assembly. It seemed that no one had a clear solution to this looming threat. That is, until Admiral Graves cleared his throat and stood to address the council. If I may, he began, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. I believe we have a way to combat the Korgeth. The other representatives fell silent, their attention turning to the human with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Admiral Graves took a deep breath and continued. As you all know, we humans are relatively new to the galactic stage. Our technology may not be as advanced as some of yours, but there is one area where we excel, one thing that has been a constant throughout our history: our weapons. A few of the council members chuckled, and the Valkorian representative spoke up again. With all due respect, Admiral, we have seen your human weapons. They are quaint, but hardly a match for the Korgeth's plasma cannons and ion torpedoes. Admiral Graves smiled, unfazed by the dismissive tone. Ah, but you haven't seen our latest creations. We have developed a new type of weapon, one that we believe can turn the tide against the Korgeth. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, sleek device. It looked like a simple metal cylinder, no more than a foot long. The council members leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. This, Admiral Graves said, holding up the device, is a railgun. It uses electromagnetic forces to launch a projectile at incredible speeds, far beyond what any conventional weapon can achieve. A single shot from this can penetrate the strongest armor, and it can fire multiple rounds per second. The council chamber erupted into a buzz of conversation. Some members looked impressed, while others remained skeptical. The Zephyrian delegate spoke up, his tone cautious. An impressive claim, Admiral. But surely such a weapon would require an enormous amount of power. How do you propose to supply that in the heat of battle? Admiral Graves' smile widened. We have developed new power sources as well, ones that can provide the necessary energy without compromising our ship's other systems. Trust me, we have thought this through. The Valkorian representative leaned back in her seat, her expression unreadable. Very well, Admiral. Let us say, for the sake of argument, that these weapons of yours are as effective as you claim. What do you propose we do with them? Admiral Graves met her gaze, his eyes glinting with determination. I propose that we integrate them into the Council fleet. Give us a chance to prove their worth against the Korgeth. If we succeed, it could turn the tide of this war. The chamber fell silent as the council members considered his words. It was a bold proposal, one that would require a leap of faith in these newcomers and their untested technology. But with the Korgeth threat looming larger every day, they might not have a choice. Finally, the Valkorian representative nodded. "Very well, Admiral Graves. You shall have your chance. But know this. If your weapons fail, it will not just be your own people who pay the price." Admiral Graves inclined his head, accepting the weight of that responsibility. "I understand. We will not let you down." With that, the meeting adjourned, and the representatives dispersed to their respective ships and worlds. Admiral Graves remained standing for a moment, the railgun still clutched in his hand. He knew that the real battle was just beginning, and that the fate of the galaxy might well rest on the shoulders of him and his fellow humans. But as he looked out at the stars, he felt a flicker of hope. They had come this far, and they would not back down now. One way or another, the Galactic Council would learn the true power of human ingenuity and determination. News of the Korgeth attack reached the Galactic Council like a shockwave. A colony world on the fringes of Council space, Zephyria Prime, had been brutally assaulted by the Korgeth forces. The colony's defenses, considered formidable by Council standards, had been swiftly overwhelmed. Eyewitness accounts painted a grim picture. The Korgeth had descended upon the planet like a swarm of locusts, their ships darkening the skies. Their weapons had torn through the colony's shields as if they were paper, and their ground troops had marched through the streets, leaving destruction in their wake. The Council convened an emergency meeting, the atmosphere thick with tension and fear. Representatives spoke in urgent tones, their faces etched with worry. "This is a disaster," said the Valkorian representative. "Zephyria Prime was one of our most secure colonies. If the Korgeth can take it so easily, what chance do our other worlds have?" "We must respond immediately," declared the Zephyrian delegate, his voice trembling with emotion. "My people are dying as we speak. We need to send reinforcements." Admiral Graves listened to the debate, his face grim. He knew that the Council forces were ill-equipped to face the Korgeth head-on. Their last encounter had proven that all too clearly. As if on cue, a holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It showed the Council fleet engaging the Korgeth forces above Zephyria Prime. The Council ships looked sleek and powerful, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. But as the battle unfolded, it became clear that they were outmatched. The Korgeth ships were larger, their armor thicker, their weapons more devastating. One by one, the Council ships fell, reduced to drifting debris by the relentless onslaught. The chamber fell silent as the display faded, the weight of the defeat hanging heavy in the air. The Zephyrian delegate slumped in his seat, his eyes haunted by the loss of his people. Admiral Graves stood, drawing the attention of the room. "Councilors," he said, his voice steady, "I believe we have no choice. We must deploy the human fleet to Zephyria Prime." The Valkorian representative looked at him sharply. "Your fleet? But you have not yet integrated our weapons into your ships. What good will you do against the Korgeth?" Admiral Graves met her gaze unflinchingly. "With respect, Counselor, we have our own weapons. Weapons that we believe can make a difference in this fight. All we ask is the chance to prove it." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, some arguing for the deployment, others against it. Admiral Graves waited patiently for the debate to subside. Finally, the Valkorian representative held up a hand, silencing the chamber. "Very well, Admiral Graves. You shall have your chance. But understand this. If you fail, the consequences will be on your head." Admiral Graves nodded solemnly. "I understand, Counselor. We will not fail." With that, he turned and strode from the chamber, his mind already racing with plans for the coming battle. He knew that the odds were against them, that the Korgeth were a formidable foe. But he also knew that the humans had a trick up their sleeve, a weapon that the galaxy had never seen before. As he boarded his flagship, the U.S. Indomitable, he felt a sense of determination settle over him. They would show the Galactic Council what human ingenuity could do. They would show the Korgeth the true meaning of human resilience. He looked out at his fleet, a collection of sleek, silver ships bristling with railguns and other advanced human weaponry. They were ready, he knew, ready to face the greatest challenge of their lives. "All ships, prepare for jump," he ordered, his voice ringing out across the comm channels. "We have a colony to save and a galaxy to defend." As the fleet leaped into warp, the stars blurring into streaks of light, Admiral Graves allowed himself a small smile. The Korgeth thought they knew the limits of warfare. They thought they had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. But they had never faced humans before. And they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. As the human fleet dropped out of warp near Zephyria Prime, they were greeted by a sight of utter chaos. The Korgeth ships swarmed around the planet like angry hornets, their weapons pounding the surface with relentless fury. The remnants of the Council fleet drifted in the space around them, reduced to little more than shattered hulks. On the bridge of the U.S. Indomitable, Admiral Graves surveyed the scene with a grim expression. He knew that they were walking into a maelstrom, but there was no turning back now. "All ships, form up," he ordered. "Prepare to engage the enemy." As the human ships moved into formation, their silver hulls glinting in the light of the nearby star, the Korgeth took notice. Their ships began to turn, orienting themselves towards this new threat. In the Lid Korgeth vessel, Warlord Kraz stood on his command deck, his eyes narrowing as he observed the approaching human fleet. They were small ships, tiny in comparison to his own mighty warships, and yet there was something about them that gave him pause. "Look at those pitiful vessels," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "The Council must be truly desperate if they are sending these humans to face us." His second-in-command, a hulking brute named Gorax, chuckled darkly. "They will be nothing more than target practice for our guns," he said. Kraz nodded, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "Indeed. Let us show these upstarts the folly of challenging the Korgeth." With that, he gave the order to attack, and the Korgeth ships surged forward, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. On the U.S. Indomitable, Admiral Graves watched the enemy's approach with a calm intensity. "All ships, prepare to engage," he said, "railguns at the ready." There was a moment of tense silence as the distance between the two fleets rapidly closed. Then, with a fierce battle cry, Admiral Graves gave the order. "Fire." The human ships opened up with a barrage of railgun fire, the hypersonic projectiles streaking across the void like bolts of lightning. The Korgeth ships, caught off guard by the unusual weapons, faltered in their advance. Warlord Kraz's eyes widened in shock as the railgun rounds slammed into his ships, piercing their thick armor like it was made of paper. Explosions blossomed across their hulls, the vacuum of space swallowing the flames an instant later. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. "What kind of weapons are these?" But there was no time for questions. The human ships pressed their advantage, their railguns firing nonstop, each shot finding its mark with unerring precision. The Korgeth ships returned fire, their own weapons lashing out at the human fleet. But the humans were ready for them. Their ships danced and weaved, evading the worst of the barrage, while their own guns never ceased their relentless pounding. Gorax turned to Kraz, his face twisted with panic. "My lord, we must retreat," he urged. "We cannot withstand this firepower." Kraz snarled, his fists clenching in frustration. He knew Gorax was right, much as it galled him to admit it. These humans, these upstarts, had caught them completely by surprise. To continue the fight would be suicide. "All ships, fall back," he ordered, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. "Regroup at the rally point." As the Korgeth ships turned and fled, the human fleet continued their pursuit, harrying the retreating enemy with constant railgun fire. The once mighty Korgeth armada was reduced to a shambles, limping away from the battle like wounded beasts. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the crew erupted into cheers, their faces alight with the joy of victory. Admiral Graves allowed himself a small smile, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The Korgath would be back, and they would not underestimate the humans again. But for now, they had won a crucial victory. They had shown the galaxy the power and ingenuity of the human spirit. As he looked out at the stars, Admiral Graves felt a sense of pride swell within him. The road ahead would be long and hard, but he knew that the humans would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought them this far. The galaxy would never be the same. The era of human ascendancy had begun. News of the human victory over the Korgath spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. Across the many worlds that made up the Council, people whispered in awe and disbelief. The humans, the newcomers, the ones so many had dismissed as primitive and unworthy, had achieved what the Council's own fleets could not. In the grand chambers of the Council itself, the reaction was a mixture of shock, relief, and for some, a grudging respect. The representatives gathered, their faces a study in contrasting emotions. The Valkorian representative was the first to speak. "This is unexpected," she said, her crystalline eyes wide with surprise. "When we allowed the humans to engage the Korgath, I confess I did not expect this outcome." The Zephyrian delegate, his feathers still ruffled from the stress of his people's narrow escape, nodded in agreement. "Indeed," he said, "it seems we have underestimated our new allies." But not all were so quick to praise. The representative of the Krill, a race known for their warlike nature, snorted in derision. "One victory does not make them our equals," he growled. "They caught the Korgath off guard, nothing more. In a fair fight, they would be crushed like the insects they are." The chamber erupted into arguments, each representative voicing their opinion on the humans' surprising triumph. Some called it a fluke, others a sign of the changing times. Through it all, Admiral Graves stood silent, observing the chaos with a calm, unreadable expression. Finally, the Valkorian representative called for order. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the din. "Fluke or not, the fact remains that the humans have bought us a reprieve. The Korgath have been beaten back, for now. We must use this time wisely." She turned to Admiral Graves, her gaze appraising. "Admiral, your people have proven their worth today. But the war is far from over. The Korgath will return, and they will be better prepared for your weapons. What do you propose we do?" Admiral Graves stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "The Korgath will adapt. That much is certain," he said. "But so will we. Humanity has a saying, 'Necessity is the mother of invention.' As the Korgath evolve their tactics, so too will we innovate new strategies and technologies to meet them." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the assembled representatives. "But we cannot do it alone. The Korgath threat is one that faces us all. If we are to prevail, we must stand together. Humans and council races united as one." The chamber fell silent, each representative considering the humans' words. It was a powerful notion, the idea of unity in the face of a common enemy. But old prejudices and distrusts were hard to overcome. The Valkorian representative was the first to respond. "You speak wisely, Admiral," she said. "But trust must be earned. Your people have made a good start today, but there is still much to prove." Admiral Graves inclined his head, accepting the challenge. "And we shall prove it," he said. "On the battlefield and off, humanity is ready to take its place among the stars, to stand shoulder to shoulder with the great races of the galaxy." With those words, the meeting adjourned, the representatives dispersing to their own ships and worlds. Each carried with them the news of the humans' victory and the promise of a new era of cooperation. But even as they celebrated, a sense of unease hung over them. The Korgath had been beaten, but not broken. They would return, stronger and more determined than ever. And the next time, the fate of the galaxy might well depend on the strength of the bond between humans and council races, a bond that would be forged in the heat of battle and tempered by the challenges to come. As Admiral Graves returned to his ship, He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The true test was yet to come. In the depths of Korgath space, Warlord Kraz paced the halls of his flagship, his rage simmering like a volcano on the brink of eruption. The humiliation of his defeat at the hands of the humans burned in his veins, a constant reminder of his failure. He had underestimated them, a mistake he swore he would not make again. These humans, with their strange weapons and their infuriating tenacity, had made a fool of him, and that was something he could not abide. "Gorax," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the ship's dark corridors. "Attend me." His second-in-command hurried to his side, his head bowed in deference. "Yes, my lord," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "How may I serve?" Kraz fixed him with a glare that could have melted steel. "I want answers," he growled. "I want to know everything about these humans and their accursed weapons. I want to know their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. And I want it now." Gorax swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously. "Of course, my lord," he said. "Our scientists are already studying the wreckage of our ships, trying to understand the human technology. We will find a way to counter it, I assure you." Kraz's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "See that you do," he said. "For your sake, and for the sake of all Korgath, we cannot allow this insult to stand." With that, he dismissed Gorax with a wave of his hand, his mind already turning to thoughts of revenge. He would make the humans pay for their insolence, and he would do it in a way they would never forget. In the labs of the Korgath's top scientists, the work to unravel the secrets of human technology was already underway. They pored over the shattered remains of Korgath ships, analyzing every fragment, every scrap of twisted metal. It was painstaking work, but slowly the pieces began to fall into place. The railguns, they realized, used principles of electromagnetic acceleration to launch their projectiles at incredible speeds. It was a technology the Korgath had experimented with in the past, but never fully developed. But now, with the evidence of its devastating effectiveness before them, they threw themselves into the task of replicating and improving upon the design. Day and night, they labored, driven by a combination of fear and fascination. And as they worked, they also began to develop countermeasures, stronger armor designed to withstand the impact of the railgun rounds, improved shields capable of deflecting the hypersonic projectiles, new weapons of their own, designed to exploit any weaknesses in the human ships. Weeks turned into months, and slowly a new Korgath fleet began to take shape. It was a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, bristling with advanced technology and built for a single purpose: the destruction of humanity. When Warlord Kraz saw the fruits of his scientists' labors, he felt a fierce joy surge through him. This was the key to his revenge, the instrument of his vindication. He wasted no time in launching his new offensive. Across the galaxy, Korgath ships descended upon Council worlds, their weapons blazing with a newfound intensity. The Council fleets, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught, struggled to mount an effective defense. On the bridge of his flagship, Warlord Kraz watched the carnage unfold with a savage satisfaction. The humans had caught him by surprise once. He would not allow it to happen again. And yet, even as he reveled in his victories, a small part of him couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for his adversaries. The humans had proven themselves to be worthy opponents, a challenge unlike any he had faced before. In a way, he relished the opportunity to face them again, to match his strength against theirs, to prove once and for all the superiority of the Korgath. The galaxy trembled under the onslaught of his new offensive, and the Council scrambled to find a way to counter it. But Warlord Kraz's eyes were fixed on a single goal: Earth, the human homeworld, the place where it had all begun. He would take the fight to them, and he would not stop until their cities lay in ruins and their spirit was broken. Only then would his revenge be complete. Only then would the galaxy know the true power of the Korgath. The Galactic Council was in chaos. The Korgath's new offensive had struck like a thunderbolt, leaving devastation and panic in its wake. Across the galaxy, council worlds fell like dominoes, their defenses crumbling under the onslaught of the Korgath's advanced weaponry. In the council chambers, the mood was one of desperation and fear. Representatives of the various races shouted over each other, their voices tinged with hysteria. "This is a disaster," cried the Valkorian representative. "Our fleets are being decimated. We must do something." The Zephyrian delegate, his feathers drooping with exhaustion, shook his head. "But what can we do?" he asked. "The Korgath's new weapons are beyond anything we've ever seen. We have no way to counter them." The room descended into a cacophony of arguing and recrimination, each representative blaming the others for the council's failure to prepare for this new threat. In the midst of the chaos, a single voice cut through the din. "What about the humans?" The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the speaker. It was the Krill representative, his reptilian features twisted into a scowl. "The humans?" the Valkorian representative asked, her voice thick with disbelief. "What about them?" The Krill leaned forward, his claws digging into the table. "They defeated the Korgath once before," he said, "with their unconventional weapons. Perhaps they can do it again." The room erupted into a new round of arguments, some dismissing the idea outright, others grasping at it like a lifeline. Through it all, Admiral Graves sat silently, his expression unreadable. Finally, the Valkorian representative turned to him, her eyes pleading. "Admiral," she said, "can your people help us?" Admiral Graves stood, his presence commanding the room's attention. "We can," he said simply. "And we will. But—" he paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled representatives. "But we cannot do it alone. The Korgath threat is greater than ever before. If we are to have any hope of defeating them, we must stand together. All of us." The room was silent, each representative weighing the human's words. It was a difficult pill to swallow, the idea of relying on these newcomers, these upstarts. But in the face of annihilation, what choice did they have? One by one, the representatives nodded their assent. They would stand with the humans, for better or worse. The fate of the galaxy would be decided as one. As the meeting adjourned, Admiral Graves couldn't shake the sense of unease that hung over him. The Council's desperation was palpable, and he knew that they were placing a heavy burden on human shoulders. But he also knew that they had no choice. The Korgath had to be stopped, no matter the cost. And if that meant humanity had to lead the charge, then so be it. He thought of Earth, his home world, and the billions of lives that hung in the balance. The Korgath had made their intentions clear. They would not stop until humanity was broken and their worlds lay in ruins. He could not, would not, let that happen. As he made his way back to his ship, he was already formulating plans, strategies, and contingencies. The Council had placed their trust in him, in humanity. He would not let them down. But even as he planned and prepared, he knew that the true test was yet to come. The Korgath were a formidable foe, perhaps the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Defeating them would require more than just human ingenuity and courage. It would require a unity of purpose, a coming together of all races, like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. It was a daunting prospect, but one he knew they had to face, for the sake of the Council, for the sake of Earth, for the sake of every living being in the galaxy. The war had entered a new phase, and the stakes had never been higher. But as Admiral Graves looked out at the stars, he felt a flicker of hope amid the darkness. Humanity had beaten the odds before. With the Council at their side, they could do it again. They had to. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council and the human forces gathered at the edge of Korgath space, a vast armada of ships from a dozen different worlds. It was a sight that had never been seen before in the galaxy, a testament to the unprecedented alliance forged in the face of annihilation. At the head of this mighty fleet was the human flagship, the U.S. Indomitable. On its bridge, Admiral Graves stood tall, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen that showed the endless expanse of stars before them. Beside him stood the leaders of the various council races, each resplendent in their own unique attire. The Valkorian representative, her crystalline skin glittering in the light. The Zephyrian delegate, his feathers preened to perfection. Even the Krill representative, his reptilian features set in a determined scowl. They were a disparate group, with little in common save for their shared enemy and their newfound reliance on human ingenuity. Admiral Graves turned to face them, his expression grave. "The time has come," he said, his voice steady. "The Korgath think they have us on the run. They think they've broken our spirit. Today we prove them wrong." He gestured to the tactical display, where the positions of the Korgath fleet were clearly marked. "Our strategy is simple," he said. "We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. We use every weapon in our arsenal, every trick up our sleeve. We show them what happens when they dare to threaten the peace of the galaxy." The council leaders nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and trepidation. They knew the stakes, knew the risks, but they also knew that this was their last, best hope. With a final nod, Admiral Graves turned back to the view screen. "All ships, prepare for warp jump," he ordered. "On my mark." The fleet surged forward, the stars blurring into streaks of light as they hurtled towards their destiny. Moments later, they emerged in the heart of Korgath territory, weapons blazing. The Korgath ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the Allied fleet, scrambled to mount a defense. But they were too slow, too scattered. The Council ships, armed with new human-designed weapons, tore through their formations like a hot knife through butter. At the forefront of the attack were the human ships, their railguns and plasma cannons wreaking havoc on the Korgath fleet. But they were not alone. The Council ships, each equipped with their own unique armaments, added their firepower to the onslaught. The Valkorian ships, with their crystalline hulls that could refract energy weapons, danced through the Korgath lines, sowing chaos and destruction. The Zephyrian ships, their hulls shimmering with advanced stealth technology, struck from the shadows, picking off Korgath vessels with surgical precision. And the Krill, their ships bristling with brutal, close-range weaponry, tore into the Korgath fleet with a savagery that even the humans found impressive. On the bridge of the Korgath flagship, Warlord Kraz watched the carnage unfold with a mix of rage and disbelief. His grand offensive, his glorious revenge, was crumbling before his eyes. He barked orders, demanding his ships to rally, to fight back. But it was too little, too late. The Allied fleet, united in purpose and emboldened by their early successes, pressed their advantage ruthlessly. In the end, it was Admiral Graves himself who struck the final blow. The U.S. Indomitable, flanked by a squadron of the most advanced human ships, broke through the Korgath lines and bore down on Kraz's flagship. In a final, desperate gamble, Kraz ordered all weapons to fire on the human vessel, but the Indomitable's shields held firm, absorbing the onslaught even as its own weapons charged to full power. A single devastating salvo from the human ship's main cannon was all it took. Kraz's flagship vanished in a blinding flash of light, taking the warlord with it. With the destruction of their leader, the Korgath fleet fell into disarray. Some ships fled, others surrendered. A few fought to the bitter end, but the outcome was never in doubt. The battle was over. The war was won. As the Allied fleet regrouped, the mood was one of jubilation and relief. Council ships hailed the humans as saviors, as heroes. Bonds of friendship, forged in the heat of battle, were cemented in the glow of victory. For Admiral Graves and his crew, it was a moment of profound pride and gratitude. They had done the impossible, had brought the galaxy together in a way that had never been done before. But even as they celebrated, they knew that this was not the end. It was a beginning, a first step on a long road towards a new era of peace and cooperation. The galaxy had been forever changed by the human presence, and as Admiral Graves looked out at the stars, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the aftermath of the great battle, the galaxy was forever changed. The Korgath, once a looming threat that seemed unstoppable, had been decisively defeated. Their ships lay in ruins, their armies scattered to the winds. But more than that, something fundamental had shifted in the very fabric of galactic society. The old rivalries and distrusts, the prejudices and misunderstandings that had divided the races for so long, had begun to dissolve. In their place, a new spirit of unity and cooperation was born. Council races that had once viewed each other with suspicion now worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources in a way that would have been unthinkable just a short time before. And at the heart of it all were the humans, the newcomers, the upstarts, who had burst onto the galactic stage with such force and determination. They had proven themselves to be more than just another race vying for power and influence. They had become a catalyst for change, a unifying force that had brought the galaxy together in a time of crisis. In the council chambers, a new era was beginning. Representatives from all races, including the humans, gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. There were still challenges to face, still wounds to heal. But there was also a sense of hope, a feeling that anything was possible now that they were united. Admiral Graves, the hero of the battle, found himself at the center of this new order. He was hailed as a visionary, a leader who had seen the potential for a new way forward and had the courage to make it a reality. But for Graves, the true heroes were his crew, the brave men and women who had fought and sacrificed to make this victory possible. They had come from all walks of life, from all corners of Earth, but they had come together as one in the face of adversity. And that, he knew, was the true strength of humanity. Not their weapons, not their technology, but their spirit, their unbreakable will, their boundless capacity for hope and determination. It was a spirit that had carried them to the stars, that had sustained them through the darkest of times. And it was a spirit that would continue to guide them as they took their place among the great races of the galaxy. As the council meeting adjourned, Admiral Graves found himself walking the halls of the great chamber, lost in thought. The weight of the future seemed to press down on him, but he also felt a sense of exhilaration, of possibility. Earth, his home, was safe. The galaxy was at peace, and a new chapter was beginning, one that promised to be filled with wonders and challenges beyond anything they had ever known. He thought of the words he had spoken to his crew on the eve of the final battle, words that seemed to encapsulate the human spirit in all its complexity and beauty. We are explorers, adventurers, seekers of knowledge and truth. We are also warriors, defenders of what we hold dear. But most of all, we are dreamers. We look to the stars and see not just what is, but what could be. And then we make it so. Those words, he knew, would guide them in the days and years to come, as humanity took its place among the stars, as they forged new bonds of friendship and understanding with the races of the galaxy. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt and fear, but they would face them as they always had, with courage and determination, with hope and dreams. For that was the human way. That was the spirit that had brought them to this moment, and that would carry them forward into the future. As Admiral Graves looked out at the stars, he smiled. The galaxy was waiting, a vast and wondrous frontier filled with endless possibilities. And humanity was ready to explore it, to learn from it, to grow and change, and become something greater than they had ever been before. The future was bright, and it was theirs for the taking.